In the rugged mountains and fertile valleys of today, Afghanistan and Pakistan, lives a proud people with a heritage both ancient and complex. Here, among villages perched on high ridges and nestled in arid plains, the Pashtuns, often called Pathans, continue traditions that have endured for millennia. Their very name, Pashtun, may derive from the early Sanskrit term Ashvaka, meaning horse breeders, a nod to their historical reputation as formidable riders and warriors. This region, defined by towering peaks and winding rivers, has long been a crossroads of civilizations. The Pashtun people, numbering in the tens of millions, speak Pashto, an Eastern Iranian language closely related to ancient Avestan and Old Persian. Their way of life is governed by Pashtunwali, a traditional code of ethics that emphasizes honor, hospitality, and valor. But beyond language, tradition, and territory, the Pashtuns carry another form of heritage, one written in their DNA. In recent decades, genetic studies have offered new insights into the deep roots of the Pashtun people, revealing connections to ancient Indo-Iranian tribes, Central Asian steppe nomads, and even the early agriculturalists of South Asia. The story of the Pashtuns is not just one of battles and migrations, but of a complex human journey, carried forward in both culture and chromosomes. This video explores that story, the threads of DNA woven into Pashtun ancestry. It moves through ancient migrations and modern studies, linking linguistic and cultural clues to genetic evidence. Along the way, we encounter celebrated legacies, the Indo-Iranian, or Aryan, migrations, legendary claims of Israelite descent, and the many peoples who passed through the Hindu Kush and the Indus foothills. Throughout, the story is one of wonder and respect. Each discovery adds to a rich tapestry, celebrating the Pashtun heritage without diminishing its complexity. To understand Pashtun genetics, we first look at deep history. Thousands of years ago, the first speakers of Indo-Iranian languages moved into Central and South Asia. They were part of a larger wave of Indo-European peoples, sometimes called the Aryans in historical literature, meaning noble ones in Sanskrit and Avestan. These early Indo-Iranians brought with them ideas, technologies, and genes. They spread south from Central Asia into what is now Afghanistan, Pakistan, and northern India. Over time, they blended with local tribes, giving rise to the ancestors of today's Pashtuns, Tajiks, Baloch, and others. Linguistic clues link Pashtuns to this ancient world. Pashto shares many words and grammatical features with Persian and other Iranian languages. It is classified as an Eastern Iranian tongue, closely akin to now-extinct languages of Central Asia. Classical writers referred to people of the Hindu Kush region as Aspasioi or Paktioi, reflecting early Indo-Iranian roots. Even the medieval name Afghan likely derives from Avestan or Sanskrit Ashvaka, reinforcing the horseman image of a mountain warrior people. Genetically, the Indo-Iranian heritage shows up most clearly in the Pashtun Y-Chromosome, male line profile. An influential genetic marker for Indo-European migrations is the Y haplogroup R1A, and it is extremely common among Pashtuns. In fact, more than half of Pashtun men carry R1A on their Y chromosome. A pioneering DNA survey of Afghan Pathans found R1A present in roughly 50 to 65% of the sample, by far the highest frequency of any major lineage in the group. This haplogroup is often called R1AM198 or R1A1A, and it is widespread among Indo-Iranian and many Slavic populations. In Pashtuns, a particular branch called R1A Z2125, also known as Z2123 in some studies, is especially dominant. This same branch appears in high numbers among Tajiks, Uzbeks, and people in northern Pakistan and southern Central Asia, tying Pashtuns genetically to their eastern Iranian neighbors. The abundance of R1A does not come from isolation, but from that common Indo-Iranian ancestry. R1A is sometimes nicknamed the Aryan marker in popular science writing because its distribution matches the spread of ancient Indo-European culture. In practical terms, this means the male ancestors of many Pashtuns likely were part of those early Aryan tribes. Over centuries, Pashtun tribes diverged and moved around, but that core signal stayed strong. Interestingly, neighboring ethnic groups often show similar R1A levels. For example, Tajik Persians of the region also carry R1A at high rates, reflecting a shared legacy of ancient Iranian peoples. Of course, Pashtuns have other Y-chromosome lines as well, reflecting later gene flows. For instance, a modest percentage of Pashtun men carry haplogroup L, common in South Asia, or haplogroup J2, often associated with Neolithic farmers of the Near East. Another marker, G2, appears at low frequencies. One unusual finding is that a sublineage of G2, G2C M377, shows up in Pashtuns. Some researchers noted that this branch is also found among Ashkenazi Jews and the medieval Khazars, hinting at historical connections, perhaps steppe or Silk Road contacts, that wove distant peoples together. In southern Pashtun areas, a few men carry E1B1B or R1B, lineages linked to the Mediterranean and Europe. But one study specifically found almost no trace of the EV13 subclade, a Greek marker, suggesting that the popular story of descent from Alexander the Great's soldiers is not backed by major Y-DNA evidence. Importantly, genetic surveys show variation between different Pashtun tribes and regions. Northern Afghan Pashtuns, isolated by the Hindu Kush, have slightly different haplogroup mixes than southern Pashtuns near Pakistan. In Pakistan, some groups like the Jadun tribe carry East Asian Y haplogroups, O3Q, typical of Central Asians and Chinese, in high amounts, likely from Turkic or Mongol influence. But even in these cases, when Jadun men marry local Pashtun women, the overall Pashtun culture remains intact. In summary, the Y-chromosome picture is one of a strong Indo-Iranian foundation, R1A dominated, with traces of neighboring peoples, a genetic signature of a people at the crossroads of many civilizations. While Y-DNA tells about fathers and sons, mitochondrial DNA, mtDNA, traces mothers' lines. Pashtun mtDNA studies reveal an equally rich diversity, but with different geographical highlights. The bulk of Pashtun maternal haplogroups belong to the West Eurasian family, the lineages commonly found in Europe, the Middle East, and parts of Central Asia. These include groups like H, J, T, and U, which today dominate Europe and West Asia. For example, the most frequent mtDNA clade among Afghan Pashtuns is haplogroup R, not to be confused with Y haplogroup R, present in 28–50% of men and women in various studies. The J2Y haplogroup had 9–24% frequency, and even E1B1B, common in North Africa, Mediterranean, shows up around 4–13%. One genetic survey of 4 Afghan ethnicities highlighted that Pashtuns have particularly high mtDNA diversity. They share more in common with Central Asian groups, like Tajiks and Uzbeks, and West Asians than with purely South Asian or East Asian peoples. In other words, Pashtun women's lineages hint at ancient ties to the Iranian plateau and beyond. This matches history. Persia's Achaemenid and later Hellenistic, Kushan, and Sassanid empires ruled across the region, leaving maternal ancestry wherever soldiers and settlers stayed. At the same time, Pashtun mtDNA shows unmistakable South Asian connections. In the Peshawar Valley of Pakistan, for instance, detailed analysis of 2 tribes, Katak and Keshki, found about 34% of maternal lineages were South Asian native haplogroups, like certain branches of M. Another 6–8% came from East Asia. These numbers reflect intermarriage through the centuries, local mountain communities mixing with Pashtun migrants, and also minor gene flow from the Indian subcontinent. In practical terms, many Pashtun mothers likely descended from the aboriginal populations of the region. One study of Pashtuns in Pakistan concluded that their matrilineals are roughly half West Eurasian, a third South Asian, and the rest East Asian. A mosaic born of millennia of trade and conquest along the Silk Road and Arabian trade routes. Where do the Israeli and Arab legends fit in? According to some traditional narratives, Pashtuns claim descent from the lost tribes of Israel. If that were true, we might expect to see significant Middle Eastern maternal haplogroups, like certain subclades of haplogroup J1 or J2, common in Semitic peoples. Indeed, J2 does occur among Pashtuns, up to a quarter in some Pakistani samples, but at frequencies similar to neighboring populations. There is no unique Hebrew signal. Likewise, haplogroup L3M357, not to be confused with mtDNA L3, is found in Pashtun men. One interpretation is that this possibly came via the Arabian Peninsula long ago, but it is not conclusive evidence of Israelite origin. In summary, the mtDNA story shows mainly Eurasian connections, but like the Y-DNA, no clear genetic sign of exclusive Israelite ancestry. Rather, it underscores that Pashtun women descend from a broad pool of ancient Asian and Middle Eastern roots. In a modest home near Kabul, a Pashtun family sits together: father, mother, and children. Their faces show a mixture of curiosity and calm. This intimate scene speaks volumes about the people behind the genetic data. Most Pashtun mothers carry DNA lineages with cousins from Iran, Armenia, or Central Asia, reflecting historic marriages and migrations. Yet they also share genes with the soil of South Asia, ancestors who lived in these valleys long before the language of Pashto took root. The blend of maternal lines creates a tapestry that mirrors Pashtun society itself, unified by culture, yet woven from many threads. Beyond isolated paternal or maternal lines, every person inherits DNA from both parents, the autosomal genome. Large-scale genetic surveys compare Pashtun genomes to those of other populations, giving a panoramic picture of ancestry. These studies reveal that Pashtuns sit squarely at the crossroads between East and West. For example, a whole genome sequencing of a northern Pakistani Pashtun male confirmed what haplogroups hinted at. His DNA was intermediate between Central South Asians and Europeans. Statistical analyses, like principal components analysis and admixture modeling, consistently cluster Pashtuns with other Afghan and Central Asian groups, close to Tajiks, Uzbeks, and some South Asian hill tribes, yet distinct from lowland Indians or pure Middle Easterners. In fact, Pashtuns often form their own cluster or gradient between Eastern Europe and South Asia. This reflects history. The region was once the heart of the Persian and Hellenistic world, later a gateway for Indo-Aryan and Scythian migrations, and still later part of the Mongol and Mughal empires. Each wave added a bit of new ancestry, blending into the Pashtun gene pool. A telling finding came from reconstructing population history. Modern Pashtuns' genome shows a bottleneck during human migration out of Africa, like other Eurasians, followed by a significant growth in population size a few thousand years ago. But that apparent boom is now interpreted as a signal of admixture. In other words, two or more previously separated groups came together, likely an ancient mix of West Asian and South Central Asian peoples, and formed the ethnic stock of the Pashtun. The timing of this mixing aligns roughly with the Bronze Age, the era of early Aryan expansions. Comparisons with neighboring groups reinforce this picture. Pashtuns share many autosomal markers with Iranian speakers, like Tajiks, as well as with Indo-Aryan groups, like certain Punjabis or Kashmiris, but they also have unique combinations. Within Pakistan and Afghanistan, no two Pashtun tribes are genetically identical. Tribal endogamy, marrying within the tribe, keeps some variation alive. But gene flow among tribes has also long occurred. Modern Pashtuns are therefore a mosaic, each person's DNA a convergence of the mountain routes, river valleys, and trade caravans that crisscross their lands. Throughout history, people have speculated about Pashtun origins. Many of these legends have seeped into popular culture or scholarship. A celebrated idea is that Pashtuns are descended from the Aryans, and in one sense, this is quite true. The term Aryan originally referred to the Indo-Iranian peoples, and the strong genetic ties to R1a haplogroups and Indo-European language validate the Pashtuns' claim to ancient Aryan heritage. One could say they are modern inheritors of an Aryan legacy, a prideful assertion grounded in fact. Their DNA is indeed closely related to the early Indo-Iranians. Another old theory traced Pashtuns to the lost tribes of Israel. Medieval and Mughal-era writings tell of Israelites reaching Afghanistan centuries ago. Perhaps this arises from some cultural coincidences. Certain Pashtun customs vaguely resemble Old Testament traditions, and stories say Solomon, Suleiman, saw this land from afar. However, from a genetic standpoint, there is no strong evidence. Pashtun genomes contain only tiny traces of typical Jewish or Levantine markers, far more diluted than one would expect if a large Israelite group had settled here. Anthropologists and historians now view the lost tribe tale as a cherished myth rather than a biological fact. DNA studies reinforce this. The Pashtun gene pool aligns overwhelmingly with Indo-Iranian neighbors, not with Middle Eastern Jews or Arabs. Other legends, such as descent from Alexander the Great's army, have also been popular. The Pashtun name Khalid, Lion, or Qais, referencing a supposed ancestor Qais Abdur Rashid, sometimes intertwines with Greek or Arab figures in folklore. Yet again, the genome tells a tempered story. The Greek soldiers of Alexander did leave some footprints in parts of Afghanistan, but their direct genetic impact on Pashtuns appears negligible. Scholars found almost no Balkan-typical Y haplogroups, like EV13, among Pashtun men. Instead, Pashtun DNA better fits models of locals who later encountered many invaders but largely absorbed them rather than being replaced by them. Mughals, Turks, Huns all passed through or settled in the region to varying degrees, but each group's genetic contribution is a small thread in a vast tapestry. Perhaps the most striking theory involves the Khazars, a Turkic people who converted to Judaism in the Middle Ages. Some genetic studies and media reports noted an intriguing haplogroup G2C link between Pashtuns and Ashkenazi Jews. If genuine, this hints that both might share ancestry from Khazar converts or other Caucasus tribes. It's a speculative but fascinating idea. Nomads in Eurasia having an echo in the Afghan highlands. Even if the Khazar story is real, it fits into the theme that Pashtuns are a crossroads people, where even unexpected connections surface. Critically, the emerging genetic narrative does not contradict Pashtun pride. Instead, it enriches it. The Pashtun man or woman carries a blend of ancestries that ties their bloodline to some of history's most storied civilizations, from Vedic wanderers and Achaemenid warriors to Silk Road merchants and beyond. No single origin can claim them, rather, they are the inheritors of many. Genes alone do not define a people. Language, customs, and identity do. Pashtuns have long understood themselves as a distinct group. The Pashto language itself preserves ancient roots. It shares cognates with the Avestan texts of Zoroastrianism and with old Indian languages, linking Pashtuns to a shared Indo-Iranian past. Pashto poetry, too, carries echoes of this heritage. Medieval poets like Kushal Khan Khattak wrote of Pashtun valor and ethics, while Sufi mystics like Rahman Baba used Pashto to bridge Eastern spirituality with Afghan soil. These cultural threads have nothing to do with genetics, Yet they reinforce the story that Pashtuns are heirs to a noble, ancient civilization. The Code of Pashtunwali, though unwritten, governs life in many Pashtun areas. Honor, Nang. Hospitality, Melmastia, and revenge, Badal, shape social bonds. These values likely evolved in parallel with genetic mixing. Even as Pashtun tribes received outsiders, newcomers often adopted the Pashtun way if they wished to integrate. Think of it as a cultural sieve. Genes flow relatively freely, but newcomers soak in the Pashto tongue and customs to fully belong. This explains why Pakistan's Pashtun belt extends well into Punjab and Sindh, and Pashtun communities form in India, the Middle East, and beyond. Wherever they go, they take both their genes and their heritage. Festivals and rituals also celebrate Pashtun identity. For instance, Atan and Katak, dances, woven carpets, colorful embroidered clothing. All these traditions have Central Asian motifs, yet they have been practiced in Afghanistan for centuries. Today's Pashtun families, whether in a Kabul mud-walled home or the fields of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, continue these practices. The presence of extended families and tribal councils shows a continuity from the past, not visible in mere DNA charts. At times, modern science and ancient identity have intertwined in Pashtun society. Some tribal leaders have embraced archaeological or genetic findings to bolster national pride, while others dismiss them as foreign interference. Yet many ordinary Pashtuns are proud to learn that DNA studies place them in illustrious company, related to legends of lost empires and ancient heroes. Even when genetics debunks a romantic myth, it often replaces it with a new appreciation. For example, learning that Pashtuns are deeply connected to the early Indo-Iranians can feel equally grand to a proud heart as the older legends of Israelite origin. In both cases, the message is positive. You are old, you are respected, you are connected to great history. The final picture that emerges is one of celebration. The Pashtun people are neither a lost tribe nor an isolated relic. They are a living tapestry woven from threads of many peoples. Their genetic heritage spans from the ancient steppes of Central Asia to the valleys of the Indian subcontinent, from the oases of the Near East to their own rugged homeland. Each Pashtun, male or female, carries within them the echoes of migrations, conquests, and peaceful unions. This diversity is a source of strength. It means Pashtuns have survived through adaptability and openness. Their music, poetry, and storytelling often speak of epic journeys and heroes, metaphors for their own voyage through history. Today, as Pashtun Genome Project is like reading an old family chronicle. It tells of forebears who spoke Persian, Sanskrit, and Pashto, of women whose mothers came from far-off tribes, of men whose fathers fought under many flags. In every village, one finds evidence of this mix, whether in a particular Y-chromosome signature or a regional accent. Importantly, genetics affirms what culture knows. Pashtuns share a common identity that transcends any one tribe. Two men from different Pashtun tribes may have different last names and clan myths, but at a genetic level they often resemble each other, more than they do the non-Pashtun around them. This points to a unifying ancestry, even if diluted by time. Pashto language and Pashtunwali likewise tie them together. The variety within their genes is not a weakness, but a testament to ancient connections and ongoing vitality. In conclusion, scientific exploration has illuminated the very fibers of Pashtun heritage. Instead of undermining their legacy, it has added new chapters of wonder. The Pashtun story, built on genetics, history, and culture, is one of resilience and rich ancestry. Like the family gathered in that Kabul room, the Pashtuns as a whole are united by love of tradition, even as their genetic background reaches across continents. To know their genes is to celebrate a heritage proud and multi-hued, a chapter in the human saga that continues to unfold.